It's been quiet at Mount Rainier for over a century. But is the iconic stratovolcano located south of Seattle finally waking up from its slumber? Scientists say it might be, and if so, they want you to know about it. The U.S. Geological Survey recently reported some new dormancy signs at Mount Rainier, which could mean that an eruption is imminent. But what does this mean exactly? Will we soon see an eruption? And what does this mean for the hundreds of thousands of people who live nearby? If you're worried about Mount Rainier waking up, don't worry. It won't be happening anytime soon. Experts say that a major eruption at Mount Rainier is unlikely in our lifetimes. That said, experts have raised the alert level at Mount Rainier because recent activity shows that it may be getting ready to erupt. Here's what you need to know about the recent activity at Mount Rainier and what scientists say it means for the future. Mount Rainier has been quiet for over 100 years, but it's due for an eruption. In fact, it's been more than 1,500 years since the last eruption of this potentially dangerous volcano. But scientists say that the time has finally come for another eruption, and it may happen sooner rather than later. But why do experts believe that an eruption is imminent? Well, there are several reasons why scientists think it's time for Mount Rainier to blow off some steam. First, there's been an increase in earthquake activity around the mountain. This could be a sign that magma is moving beneath the surface and getting ready to erupt. In addition, the ground beneath the volcano has been swelling, and while this doesn't mean anything right now, it's something that scientists will continue to monitor closely in case it gets worse. Finally, there's been an increase in steam and gas emissions from the volcano. This could also be a sign that magma is rising beneath the surface and that an eruption is imminent. Of course, just because there's been an increase in activity at Mount Rainier doesn't mean that an eruption is imminent. It could just be that the volcano is letting off some extra steam after a long winter's nap. But scientists are taking these signs seriously because Mount Rainier is one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the United States. Mount Rainier is a stratovolcano, which means that it's made up of layers of ash and lava. It's one of the tallest mountains in the Cascade Range and the most prominent peak for miles around. The mountain is 14,410 feet above sea level and towers nearly 3,000 feet over the surrounding terrain. Its summit is covered in ice and snow year-round, and the mountain is home to 25 known glaciers. Mount Rainier is one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the United States because it's located near a densely populated area. If it were to erupt, it would cause widespread damage and loss of life. In fact, geologists estimate that about 13,000 people would be killed or injured if Mount Rainier erupted today. Thousands more would have to be evacuated from their homes, and many businesses would be destroyed. So it's important that we take steps to prepare for a possible eruption. Even though Mount Rainier hasn't erupted in over 1,500 years, it could erupt again at any time. A large eruption at Mount Rainier would release huge amounts of volcanic ash into the air. The ash would blanket the surrounding area and travel far beyond the immediate vicinity of the volcano. People for miles around would have to take cover, and the eruption column would reach high into the atmosphere. Pyroclastic flows would also race down the slopes of the volcano, destroying everything in their path. Lava flows would move outward from the vent and destroy all the buildings and infrastructure in their path. In short, an eruption at Mount Rainier would be devastating. But here's the good news. Scientists are working hard to monitor the volcano and provide early warnings if an eruption does occur. So even though there's always the possibility that Mount Rainier could erupt, we're in good hands. Here's what scientists do to monitor Mount Rainier for signs of an eruption. Scientists use a variety of tools to monitor Mount Rainier for signs of an eruption. One of the most important things they look for is changes in the shape of the mountain. If the mountain begins to bulge in any particular area, it could be a sign that magma is pushing its way to the surface. Scientists also look for changes in the frequency and size of earthquakes in the area. An increase in earthquake activity could also be a sign that magma is moving beneath the surface. In addition, scientists monitor the gases that are emitted from the volcano. Changes in the amount or type of gas can indicate that an eruption is coming. Finally, scientists keep a close eye on the weather on the mountain. Unusual weather patterns could be a sign that magma is rising and causing changes in the atmosphere. By monitoring all of these things, scientists can get an early warning if an eruption does occur. They can then issue a warning to the public so that everyone can take cover. So how likely is it that Mount Rainier will erupt in your lifetime? If you're watching this video, chances are you live in the United States. And if you live in the United States, chances are you're pretty safe from Mount Rainier erupting. That's because Mount Rainier is located in Washington state, far away from the rest of the country. In fact, the only people who are really at risk of being affected by a Mount Rainier eruption are those who live in the immediate vicinity of the mountain. So if you don't live near Mount Rainier, you probably don't need to worry about its eruption. However, if you do live near the mountain, it's important to be prepared in case it does erupt. Make sure you have a plan in place for what you will do if an eruption does occur. What should you do if Mount Rainier erupts? If Mount Rainier erupts, you should do whatever you can to protect yourself and your family. If you're outside, take shelter immediately. If you're inside, stay inside and away from windows. If you're driving, pull over and stay in your car. Be careful of falling rocks and other flying debris. And if you can, leave the area as quickly as possible. You should also be aware of the potential for mudslides and other debris flows. These can happen even if you're not directly in the path of the eruption. If you see a debris flow coming your way, run to higher ground as quickly as possible. You should also be aware of the potential for ash fall. Ash can cause serious respiratory problems, so it's important to protect yourself if you can. If you're outside, put on a mask or cover your mouth and nose with a cloth. If you're inside, stay indoors and keep your windows closed. You should also be aware of the potential for pyroclastic flows. These are extremely hot and can incinerate everything in their path. If you see a pyroclastic flow coming your way, run to higher ground as quickly as possible. You may not have much time to react, so it's important to be aware of the potential danger. We hope that this video has given you some insight into what might happen if Mount Rainier erupts. We also hope that you'll be prepared in case the worst does happen. Remember, an eruption at Mount Rainier would be devastating, but it's unlikely to happen in your lifetime. Still, it's always smart to be prepared. Thanks for watching.